They laughed when I showed up poor at my son's wedding, but froze when I handed him 500 million. A humble mother walks into a palace of wealth and power, dressed in her old Sunday dress, mocked and humiliated by everyone who sees her. They think she doesn't belong, that she's nothing. But what they don't know is she carries a secret that will shatter their arrogance in an instant. When she steps forward with her gift, the laughter turns to silence, and greed takes its place. Suddenly, allies turn into enemies, and enemies into smiling pretenders. Behind the applause hides a dangerous plan, one that could destroy not just her fortune, but her family. Will this mother's act of love bring unity, or will it unleash a storm of betrayal that money can't buy her way out of? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning light seeped through Martha Callahan's faded curtains, casting long shadows across her small trailer. Outside, the neighborhood stirred to life, but inside her modest home, Martha moved with purpose, trying to ignore the knot in her stomach. She filled her old percolator with water and spooned in the last of her coffee grounds, stretching them thin. The familiar gurgle filled the kitchen as she pulled her husband's photo from its place of honor on the shelf. "Well, Tom," she whispered, running her thumb over his smiling face. "Today's the day. Our boy's getting married." Tom's eyes seemed to twinkle back at her from behind the glass. 5 years gone, and still she sought his counsel every morning. "I know what you'd say. Hold your head high, Martha. Easier said than done when you're walking into a place where nobody wants you." She poured her coffee into a chipped mug and took a cautious sip. It was weak, more water than coffee, but it would have to do. The rich folks at the wedding would have their fancy espresso drinks. She had this. Martha set the photo down gently and walked to her bedroom. From the closet, she pulled out her navy blue dress, her Sunday best for the past decade. It was simple but clean, with a modest neckline and hemline that fell just below her knees. She laid it carefully on the bed and smoothed the wrinkles with her palm. Next came her white shoes, scuffed at the toes from years of wear. Martha sat at the kitchen table with an old cloth and a dab of white polish, working the leather until it gleamed as best it could. Her fingers, knotted with arthritis, moved with care over each mark and scratch. "There," she said with satisfaction. "Almost good as new." From the drawer of her bedside table, she retrieved her old handbag, the leather worn soft at the handles. Martha opened it, checking its contents: a handkerchief, her reading glasses, a tube of lipstick, and most importantly, the small white envelope. She picked up the envelope, weighing it in her hand. Inside was something that would change everything, something no one at that fancy wedding would expect. Martha tucked it safely back into her purse. After dressing, she stood before the small mirror in her bathroom. Her silver hair was neatly pinned back, her makeup minimal but careful. She looked respectable, not fancy, but dignified. "You clean up nice, old girl," she told her reflection with a small smile. Outside, the morning had bloomed into full sunshine. Martha locked her door and made her way to the bus stop at the entrance of the trailer park. She could feel curious eyes on her from neighboring windows and porches. Mrs. Henderson, watering her potted geraniums, called out, "Going somewhere special, Martha?" "My son's wedding," Martha replied, lifting her chin slightly. "Fancy affair, is it?" Mrs. Henderson's eyes traveled over Martha's modest outfit. "No cab today?" "The bus will do just fine," Martha answered politely, though the question stung. Everyone knew she couldn't afford a taxi to the country estate where the ceremony would be held. She stood at the bus stop, her back straight despite the growing heat. Other neighbors passed by, some nodding hello, others openly staring. Martha knew what they were thinking. Why wasn't her successful son sending a car for his own mother? When the bus finally rumbled up to the curb, Martha felt a surge of relief. She climbed aboard, paid her fare, and found a seat by the window. As the bus pulled away, she reached into her bag, her fingers finding the envelope. Her heart pounded hard against her ribs, a mixture of maternal pride and gnawing fear. Today would change everything, for better or worse. The bus pulled away in a cloud of exhaust, leaving Martha standing alone at the edge of the estate's sprawling grounds. Before her stretched a long, winding driveway lined with blooming roses and perfectly trimmed hedges. At its end stood a mansion that looked like something from a movie, all stone and columns and sparkling windows. "Excuse me," muttered a woman in a flowing silk dress as she brushed past Martha, her perfume hanging in the air like an expensive cloud. Martha smoothed her Sunday dress, the nicest one she owned, save for special occasions and worn thin at the elbows. She'd spent an hour last night pressing it, making sure every crease was perfect. Now, as couples in fine clothes streamed past her, Martha felt the fabric grow heavy with inadequacy. "Did she take the bus here?" a young man whispered to his date, not bothering to lower his voice enough. "Must be staff," his companion replied with a smirk. Martha clutched her handbag tighter, feeling the envelope inside her gift, her secret. She lifted her chin and walked forward, one foot in front of the other. At the entrance, two ushers in matching suits stood checking invitations. When Martha approached, they exchanged glances. "Invitation, ma'am?" the taller one asked, his eyes scanning her modest outfit. "I'm David Callahan's mother," she replied, her voice quiet but clear. The ushers hesitated, consulting their list with obvious disbelief. "Martha Callahan?" one finally asked. "Yes." "Right this way, then," he said, his tone making it clear he thought there must be some mistake. As she passed through the doorway, a woman Martha recognized as David's new mother-in-law's sister turned to her friend. "That's the mother? Goodness, no wonder they didn't mention her in the announcements." The words stung, but Martha kept walking. The grand hall opened before her, a cathedral of wealth with marble floors and crystal chandeliers casting rainbow light across the room. Flowers worth more than her monthly rent adorned every surface. Martha felt small, insignificant, but as she stepped fully into the hall, she straightened her shoulders. She might not belong in this world of wealth and privilege, but she belonged in her son's life. That was enough to keep her head high. Martha found a seat near the back where shadows seemed to offer her a small respite from the glaring judgments. Her heart felt like a hummingbird caught in her chest, each thud painfully reminding her of the eyes grazing her skin. Elegant guests fluttered past, the rustle of silk and laughter blending into a symphony of elegance and exclusion. "Is that the groom's mother?" A whisper slithered through the room like an unwanted guest at an ornate wedding table. "She looks like a maid." Martha's dress felt like a flag announcing her position a commoner among royalty. Her eyes dipped to the floor, tracing the intricate tile pattern. If only she could be as small and unassuming as those geometric shapes pressed tightly together. From across the room, the bride's family formed a congregation of disdain, their eyes passing over Martha like storm clouds. Smug smirks flickered behind barely veiled glances. Her ex-brother-in-law, a man she'd once shared Sunday dinners with, leaned toward another guest. "She doesn't belong here," he muttered, making Martha's heart ache like a bruise. The weight of the envelope in her handbag grew heavier, pulling at the straps with a gravity filled not just with paper but pride. Her fingers worried at the edges, smoothing over the worn leather as if it were a talisman against her rising sense of humiliation. The idea of escape flickered brighter in Martha's mind with each passing moment. To leave, slip out like a ghost, and spare herself the whispers and pitying looks. But then she imagined David, her son, her joy standing alone at the altar, and her resolve clenched tightly around her fear. She hadn't raised her son to see love colored by wealth or appearances. She had been his home, his comfort, his haven. Even if her presence here felt like an intrusion, her love deserved a place at this marriage too. Martha's heartbeat calmed its futile fluttering as the room's energy shifted. Dresses swirled with vibrant hues as people prepared themselves for the ceremony. She straightened up, casting a last glance at the pile of disdain before the grand door swung open. David entered, the picture of composed anticipation. His tuxedo embraced him in its dark folds, complementing the untamed restlessness in his eyes, the blue of his tie reflecting the vibrant sky outside. Beside him, the bride in her gown shimmered with ivory and lace, her hope wrapped in delicate fabric. David's gaze swept the room like a torchlight seeking comfort in the night. It paused briefly on Martha's gentle face, allowing her a moment of warmth and pride. But his eyes quickly moved away, as though afraid to linger long enough to feel guilt basking in his mother's presence. Martha felt the cool absence of her son's acknowledgement as something vital slipped away, leaving her at the edges once more. Though his love for her was present, it was shadowed by the world he had stepped into, one that demanded alliances stronger than blood. She took a steadying breath, finding a foothold in her silent devotion, one that would not be overshadowed by whispers or laughter. The ceremony was about to begin, and Martha was determined not just to witness it, but to be proud of it, regardless of where she was seated. So she clasped her handbag, rested her heart's burden within it, and allowed faith and love to hold the tide of doubt at bay, proving that she belonged wherever her son's happiness lay. As the minister took his place at the altar and the ceremony settled into a gentle rhythm, Martha clutched her nostalgia like a precious heirloom. Her gaze was fixed on David, radiant against the altar's backdrop. Each word from the minister wove through the room like a spell, binding hearts and futures. The bride stood poised beside David, her presence a delicate weave of beauty and poise. Martha admired the graceful arc of her gown, even as a subtle wave of sadness washed over her. She imagined what her husband would have said, his voice a comforting embrace in moments like these. Family is love's foundation, however it's built. Surrounded by opulence, every detail orchestrated to perfection, Martha felt the bride's family's influence pulsing through the room. They embodied the silent conductors, shaping each turn of event with a wave of expectation. Those gathered responded like strings on an expertly played harp, every motion precise and deliberate. Above the whispered vows, the bride's family adorned the room with their presence. Each glance exchanged confirmed their mastery in controlling the symphony of the day. Martha, ensconced at the back, found herself swept to the margins. Her love, though profound, seemed monochrome against the technicolor exuberance of their authority. With each exchange of sacred promises, guest eyes drifted toward Martha, marking her as a strange footnote to a grand tale. Her presence jarred against silk ties and bespoke gowns, a solitary squatter in a mansion of imagined finery. Yet their stares, as sharp and fleeting as diamond cut, did little to chip at the stone facade Martha had learned to wear. She focused on her son. He was hers, an undeniable part of her woven into the ceremony by virtue of their shared history, not couture. David's vow reached across the room, each syllable painted with sincerity's stroke. Martha's heart swelled with pride, recognizing the echoes of evenings spent over meals, moments shared, and the honest exchange of dreams whispered into long-gone nights. Emotion rose like cascading waves. Martha blinked against the stinging reminder in her eyes, and found solace in the tides of memory engulfing her. She recalled David's younger days, when dreams were forged in the comfort of their humble home, promises built not on wealth but on hope and shared vision. The minister closed the sacred text. As he spoke the closing words of union, Martha's vision blurred, her sight awash with tears she dared not wipe away. David turned to his bride, their hands intertwining in a web of delicate lace and gentle certainty. Martha watched them, felt the quiver of significance, steadying her heart. As the couple shared their first kiss as husband and wife, a thundering crescendo of applause wrapped the room, sealing the moment with a blanket of approval and joy. Guests leaned forward, their eyes alight with the awe and delight of witnessing a new chapter unfold. In the sea of jubilant faces, Martha sat in quiet solitude, a lighthouse in the midst of celebration. Her tears, unshed cries of joy, whispered silently against the grandeur, their gentle hum lost amid the room's cheering embrace. Unseen, her love stood unwavering, a constant sentry through the shifting tides of life's ceremony. This day was hers too, a chapter of sacrifice, a tapestry sewn from quiet humility and resilience. Though the applause thundered without recognizing her, Martha knew her heart had written its own unspoken vow, wrapping around her son in a quiet eternity. With the applause fading, Martha held her tears close. They were hers alone, a proclamation of pride that echoed into invisibility, cherished in solitude, a silent monument to a mother's love, steadfast and eternal. In the reception hall, the clinking of glassware mingled with laughter, a symphony of celebration that filled the grand space. Champagne bubbles danced under the glow of intricate chandeliers, while guests, adorned in designer attire, exchanged stories and toasts that reached every corner. Martha found herself at a table on the fringes of engagement, a silent witness to the glittering parade. With her modest handbag settled beside her, she scanned the crowd, watching as clusters of people floated from one group to another, each moment polished with practiced ease. "Would you like some caviar, madam?" A kind-faced waiter approached her, his tray laden with delicacies that mirrored the extravagance of the room. "Thank you," Martha replied, her voice steady, though her heart ached with displacement. She accepted a delicate cracker, its load of caviar, a curious blend of opulence she found unfamiliar. Around her, guests dipped into conversations that flowed as smoothly as the silk of their attire. "Did you see her shoes?" A voice drifted over the waves of chatter. Martha felt the sting without needing confirmation of who she referred to. "Looks like she wandered in from a garage sale." She shifted in her seat, attempting to draw the corners of her resolve tighter around her. Each whisper pricked her self-assurance, a tapestry of remarks that tried to unravel her in silence. "Another glass, perhaps?" The waiter returned, his presence a small island of sincerity in the otherwise turbulent sea. "Yes, please," she answered, grateful for his kindness. "You've got an eye for when someone needs one." "Experience teaches you to read a room," he replied, a hint of knowing warmth in his smile. As she sipped, conversations ebbed and flowed, the room a tide of murmurs and laughter. Martha noted how the bride's family navigated the space in sweeping arcs of confidence. They were the orchestrators, sliding seamlessly between guests, an intricate dance designed for admiration. Their elegance underscored their influence, even as it cast shadows over those like her who stood outside its embrace. Laughter rang out again, neared by the orbit of a passing group. You'd think she'd be out of place, but she just stands there, clutching that bag like its treasure. Martha's fingers traced the worn leather of her handbag, feeling both its familiar comfort and the invisible yoke of judgment it now carried. Her resolve strengthened, however. From memories of choosing this simple accessory, the small emblem of steadfast love, and journeys shared with her family, the noise of anticipation silenced the room as an impeccably dressed figure took to the stage. The bride's father, his presence commanding, raised his glass high, demanding the gaze of all. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice rang clear, carrying the authority of well-practiced charm. "Today, we celebrate not just the union of our families, but the coming together of equals, a marriage of stature and shared values." The room hummed with agreement, eyes following the unwritten script of admiration and affirmation. His gaze flickered toward her table, eyes reflecting a measured intent. "Families of equal stature coming together," he reiterated, his words wrapped in a honeyed cadence that carried an unspoken barb. The room let out a chuckle, the collective mirth a weight that pressed against Martha's chest. Her heart pulsed with a quiet, fierce determination, a response born of not irritation or shame, but of pride in history. For though she sat apart, she remained unbroken by the visible opulence, her legacy a different kind of wealth, not measured by riches, but by resilience and love. The laughter faded, dissipating into the high ceilings, leaving behind a space filled with the familiar interplay of light and shadow. Though isolated, Martha felt a gentle hand of solidarity, a reminder of the enduring power that was shared in the smallest of gestures, like the waiter's kindness, like her endless reserve of compassion. In that determined celebration of spirit, she found her footing, even if none but she could truly share in its triumph. Martha sat at her table, fingers wrapped tightly around the worn leather of her handbag, pressing it into her lap. The chatter and laughter around her felt like a distant echo now, each morsel of amusement a reminder of her perceived place beneath these esteemed circles. Her heart beat in its own rhythm, a flutter that spoke not of defeat, but of a resolute edge. She remembered the quiet morning spent in her trailer, the photo of her late husband shielding her from doubts that threatened to undermine her. Today would be different. Today, she wouldn't let her son's wedding day close around her like a shroud of humiliation. Her fingers found the envelope again. It was light, yet held the weight of decisions made quietly, profoundly. Martha resolved herself, felt the soft tremor in her hands, acknowledging both the fear and the bravery nestled there. Abruptly, as if called by an unseen tide, she stood, drawing herself up with quiet grace. The sea of faces turned toward her, an audience caught mid-breath. They watched with varying degrees of interest, surprise lingering in the eyes that couldn't look away. Her footsteps were soft against the polished floor, a rhythm that carried her across the room and towards the microphone. She walked through a sea that parted in whispers, guests murmuring as curiosity edged into expectation. The envelope, held like a shield close to her heart, was all that mattered now as preconceived notions fell away in her mind. The microphone seemed to loom larger as Martha neared it, a sentinel watching over sprawling tables and attentive eyes. Her fingers touched the cool surface that awaited her voice, feelings churning behind her poised exterior. Silence followed her. A current of anticipation pulsed through the room, an expectant stillness that left every eye upon her. Martha paused, feeling the momentum of her journey collect just behind her like a reassuring hand. The time jitters ceded to a profound courage that welled up from a place deeper than pride. This was for David, for her family, for the life and love they built together. "I'd like to give my son a gift," she said clearly, allowing her voice to thread through the quiet space, reaching every corner. Her voice was soft yet carried the weight of her heart, and each word seemed to settle gently upon those who listened, its edges softened by sincerity. The room inhaled collectively, drawn into the unfurling truth of Martha's presence. What had been laughter, what had been judgment all faded, replaced by the gravity of her simple statement. In the long gaze she shared with the crowd, she could see a spectrum of emotions etched into the faces before her, from disbelief to curiosity, from intrigue to newfound respect. But none of it mattered as much as the intent behind her offer. Martha's eyes found David amidst the sea of faces, His expression mirrored 1,000 questions and a singular warmth that tethered her resolve tighter. She knew, without need of confirmation, that her actions would open doors not just new but necessary. Her purpose resonated in the silent exchange that passed between them. With her truth held out for all, Martha allowed herself a brief moment of solace, standing already within the transformation she sought. Life's complexities had painted shadows across this day. Yet here, beneath the glittering chandeliers, a fitting light began to take its true shape. The room, once filled with precedents and conventions, now brimmed with the change that a mother's love could inspire a narrative altered by the humble gift of belief and legacy. As she watched the unfolding comprehension in eyes that once judged, Martha witnessed the resilience of compassion itself, reflecting back to her, stronger than any measure of wealth. In the vastness of the space, framed by 100 breaths held in suspense, Martha Callahan stepped back and paused ready, at last, for what would follow, confident that it was the beginning of yet another story, woven in truth and enveloped in enduring faith. The room held its collective breath as Martha extended the envelope to David. Her hand shook slightly, but her eyes held steady, warm pools of assurance, silently reassuring him there was nothing to fear beneath the brittle paper. David took it with a curiosity threaded through his fingers, eclipsed by traces of disbelief. The guests leaned closer, perched at the edge of their seats, drawn by an unspoken command to witness the unfolding spectacle. His fingers played across the flap, before tugging it open, eyes twitching with anticipation. The envelope gave way to a check, a single slip of paper, cascading the culmination of Martha's labor. Her dreams tethered to digits that startled the senses. The number captured David's full attention, as if the ink itself whispered affirmations to his soul. The room swirled around him, absorbing the fresh reality spelled out in plain sight. 500 million. A figure etched so boldly it seemed to hang in the very air, echoing through every unspoken gap in logic around them. Gasps rippled across the space between opulent garments and gleaming chandeliers. Voices rose in waves of disbelief. "That can't be real," one murmured, their tone tinged with incredulity. Another sneered, "She's bluffing," chasing after the slice of elation her action had unveiled. Laughter surrendered its edges to shock, prizing open pockets of astonishment as the truth lay bare before them. Despite the ambiance that tumbled into chaos, Martha stood unmoved. A lighthouse, the bride's father stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the polished floor with an uncomfortable squeal. His expression was a mask of control, though beneath it simmered an unyielding conflict. "Excuse me," he intoned. His voice, a tight thread, slipped from the spool of his composure. As he navigated the maze of round tables and gilded arches, his absence left a vacancy in the room's energy, one that snapped back into definition around Martha. The guests, now tuned to a new frequency, gravitated toward her, their former derision repositioned into sudden, fervent admiration. Simply incredible, a voice effused, polished nails drumming an approving beat on Martha's arm. The woman's lips curled into a smile, a glint of admiration intertwined with something harder to place. "Unbelievable generosity, Mrs. Callahan," another chimed, repositioning themselves closer, as if drawn by magnetism. Eyes watered not by emotion, but by mesmerized calculation, deciphering possibilities sprung from newly revealed wealth. Martha felt a breath of space compress her chest. The shift was dizzying. Where once cold eyes weighed her down, a new lightness skewed her perception. Smiles dipped in sincerity, and an artificial gleam disoriented her. She nodded politely, words woven with diplomacy. "Thank you," she murmured, repeating the simple phrase as a shield against the tempest of flattery. Her pulse steadied, rooting herself amidst their clamor for attention, each voice rising above another in an unsaid contest. "Why, such a meaningful gift. Do consider a small partnership down the road," suggested a bespectacled gentleman, his grin polished by the thrust of ambition. Glances edged others aside, each jockeying for relative importance in the orchestrated dance of newfound revelations. Yet through it all, Martha stood firm, her inner compass aligning her gaze toward what truly mattered. Her fingers brushed the edge of her handbag, a tangible reminder of grounding, weighted by history, heavier than any sum. Amidst the crowd, her son moved quietly, taking in the swirling expressions. David's gratitude shimmered through the veneer of confusion, his pride now mingled with understanding. The questions, the weight of how intertwined with why weaved into unanswered corridors of his mind. As the crowd breathed a collective sigh, its fabric shifted. The bride hovered on the fringes, observing Martha. Her face, painted by folds of ivory fabric that draped to the floor, bore an unreadable expression. Her painted lips barely moved, "Won't you introduce me?" she asked David coolly from the edge of propriety. David hesitated, flickering a glance toward his mother. "This is my mother, Martha Callahan." The bride nodded fractionally, gaze a needle's point. The expression nestled within her eyes carried not warmth, but a muted contemplation, one colored by possibility, not pride. As guests retreated into reverie, she approached Martha with a measured grace, fabric rustling in a composed whisper against the floor. "Martha," she spoke her name softly, her voice cutting through the air shared only by them. Martha turned to meet her shadowed eyes, her own gaze unwavering, searching beneath the porcelain veneer of her world. The bride leaned close, a secret poised on her lips. Her eyes held a clarity to oneself and to another twofold in honesty and fragile understanding. "You've just changed everything," she whispered, a note half entrapped in maple silk and white petals. The other guests buzzed unaware around them. "And not for the better." Her words lingered, tracing their way along the curve of silence as she retreated, her presence a phantom among shadows. Martha's heart stilled at the statement's edge. The truth, given voice as a gift, lay entwined in its complexity, a choice made not as luxury but necessity, cementing paths new yet unwalked. In the midst of wealth's tempest, uncertainty whispered its promises. But for Martha, compassion carved its way anew through the looming haze. The dining hall brimmed with the scent of rosemary and thyme, savory aromas curling around expensive chandeliers that cast a gentle glow over the assembled guests. Each delicate arch and embroidered chair framed power and privilege, while crystal glasses teased slivers of light onto polished wood. Martha found herself ushered to the head table, flanked by pillars of pedigree wrapped in tailored elegance. "Please, Mrs. Callahan, do join us. It's only fitting on such a momentous occasion," the bride's father urged, his arm guiding her with a practiced motion that spoke of aristocratic courtesy. Surrounded by meticulously plated dishes, guests engaged in the perpetual dance of society's surface. Conversations flowed like silk, a cascade of compliments and hearty laughter catering to appearances. "You must have the lamb," a balding man suggested, adjusting his tie beneath ruddy cheeks. He raised his wine glass in a mocking semblance of purloined respect. Martha settled into the plush chair, her fingers drawing comfort from the worn edges of her handbag once laid at her side. Faces glowed with congenial masks, but shadows hinted at underlying motives. With every bite, scrutinizing gazes evaluated her place at this elevated table. Sentiment carried on the edges of ambition, and subtleties slithered beneath folded linen, vying for her attention. Serving forks and ladles past dishes with mechanical precision, though Martha's appetite evaded her. Her heart, full but strained, navigated the complexities of this newfound role, one she stumbled upon, yet now held. Amid the orchestrated dance of dinner conversation, the bride's father leaned closer, his eyes gleaming like polished emeralds beneath the table's sheen. His voice, measured and capable, slipped into the space between. "Martha, I've been thinking," he murmured, masking calculation with curiosity, "how an infusion to our family's portfolio could be mutually beneficial." Expressions faltered for a fraction, seconds caught in reprieve as ears tuned toward the proposal. His smile had the sharpness of a raptor's beak, cloaking intent in the guise of benevolence. "Our investments are, of course, stable, impeccable, really. With your newfound resources, we could expand, reach new heights. Surely a family of shared interests could find strength through unity." Martha's response traced back to quiet virtue. Her lips curved, holding grace and simplicity a steady light against calculated appeal. "That's generous," she began, acknowledging each word's weight. "But my interests lie elsewhere. I'm sure you understand." Her tone echoed with gentle resolve, a genuine humility ingrained not by the fabric of wealth but sewn within resilient choices, honesty above enticement, truth beyond currency. The table sat mute in response, attention diverted to the conversation's heart. Glasses rested as guests processed the subtle denial, laughter re-earning its place more hesitantly, forming a thin veil over disappointment. The bride's father offered a curt nod, repositioning his smile to contain displeasure. His eyes, once two fertile fields brimming with serene hues, thinned into guarded embers of irritation. Subdued conversation resumed its rhythm, challenging Martha while maintaining the evening's opera of status and expectation. Each guest recalibrated their regard, the air alive with impressions unseen yet resonantly felt. Martha sensed the shifting pressures around her, bound in diplomacy, though lightened by her leadership in silence. Unyielding in the face of demands she refused to entertain, resilience and fortitude gathered around her like clouds, moving steadfast across an expansive canvas. The bride's father sought recognition in the calculated mechanics of familiarity and precision. Yet now, as the truth lay between them, untouched by greed, his expression drew thin, etched firmly in the artifice of control. The clenching of his jaw mirrored the contained storm beneath the curves of polite dismissal. Rage gathered in pits of emerald, spinning undetected within the texture of present decorum. But Martha met his gaze with her own, a reflection unmarred by such ambition, steadfast in defiance, gently anchored in the belief in what must endure. As the meal continued, the lines of his features remained tight, drawn against what neither prosperity nor shrewdness could force to bend. As the airy fragrance of bougainvillea embraced the evening, Martha stepped out onto the balcony, seeking refuge amid the cool breeze in the star-pricked sky. Below her, the estate's gardens stretched like silent sentinels under the cloak of night, their blooms withheld from the expectant throng inside. A soft murmur of voices and laughter drifted from the banquet hall, veiled by the gentle rustle of leaves. Martha's thoughts tangled in a delicate web, each strand woven with doubts burgeoning at the edge of her consciousness. Had her revelation served its purpose, or had it merely unraveled fragile bonds she was incapable of mending? She hugged her worn handbag closer, the evening's events swirling like leaves caught in a tempest. Her breath mirrored the night, rhythmic yet hesitant. Here outside, where the whispers of the ballroom couldn't reach, solitude offered solace wrapped in unanswered questions. A creaking door announced a visitor, a young waiter emerging into the crisp air. His familiar demeanor reached Martha, a thread of warmth amid a haze of unease. "Mrs. Callahan?" Pause lent the weight of respect beyond routine utility. "It's a beautiful night, isn't it?" His gentle approach spoke volumes of empathy beyond obligation. He settled beside her, looking over the gardens just as the moonlight danced along the petals below. "Indeed," she replied, her voice blending with the rustling leaves. "Though I fear it holds burdens I failed to foresee." The waiter observed her, taking in the lines of her features softened by reflection, the small creases etched by years but lit by an inner resolve. In those moments he saw not the bearer of unimaginable wealth, but a mother striving for ideals far richer. "I've been serving in places like this for a while," he confessed with a quiet smile. "And folks like you, they don't come around often." She lifted her gaze, searching his expression for understanding, curiosity piqued by his statement. His sincerity wrapped around her confidence, an acknowledgement of values cherished yet unvoiced. "But the choice weighed heavily," Martha offered, her words tinged with doubt. "Yes, choices often do," he agreed, his tone gentle yet firm as the wind that guides without resistance. "But you gave from love. Those who find the courage to share such gifts seek nothing of material consequence." He leaned against the railing, his presence anchoring her drifting thoughts. As his words danced amidst the night's chorus, something shifted, something softened. "Sometimes, amid grandeur and ambition," he continued, his gaze steady against shadows of opulence, "people forget that love can outweigh any fortune." Martha nodded, her heart buoyed by reassurance, threaded with subtle wisdom. The essence of his sentiment unfurled anew, radiant in the twilight of introspection. She cradled it gently, hoping its truth might guide her to clarity amid the storm's aftermath. "Thank you," she murmured, the simple gratitude shared without adornment. He nodded, retreating with respect for her solitude, and leaving lingering echoes of sincere understanding. Alone once more, Martha allowed herself the luxury of staring into the eternal expanse of stars. Yet in her eyes, doubt lingered still. Though kindness assured her of good intentions, the night bore its own uncertainty, gnawing softly at what had begun to flourish. Martha clasped her handbag tightly, as if promises whispered among stars might bring her answers. The eventual shift of tides would chart its course beyond control, beyond foresight, and she, like all who follow paths unfurling into unknown futures, must accept fate alongside hope. Her whisper carried on the winds, traveling to where dreams and fears abide in fragile harmony. "But at what cost?" she breathed. The inquiry an echo to the universe, a desire for solace tucked within reality wrapped securely beneath a blanket of conviction that remained, unyielding against a storm's fury. The powder room was a refuge from the grand world outside the mirrored walls, reflecting endless echoes of decorations spun in silks and porcelain finery. Martha glimpsed herself, surrounded by veneers of elegance that masked turmoil deep within. Yet it was the bride's presence that fractured the fragile calm, her entrance bold, steps urgent against Mary's quiet respite. In white swathes of satin and lace, the bride halted before Martha. Her eyes shimmered with an unsettling blend of resolve and vulnerability. The room seemed to shrink, settling around them as if cocooning the confrontation that unfurled between bated breaths. Martha acknowledged the moment, anchoring herself amid the irony of shared isolation cloaked in unexpected candor. "You look lovely," she ventured, her voice steady, if only to pierce the silence made dense by the unspoken past. The bride's expression twisted a dance between sadness and determination, her facade cracked but not surrendered. "Appearances deceive," she replied, shedding whispers of another world, not one of gowns and glamour but whispers of greed. Staring into reflections that betrayed hints of truth, she introduced her father's dream, a grafting of lives less for love than for legacy. The merger of falsity, disguised in wedding vows, a tool sharpened to hone ambitions beyond empathy's reach. "I never wanted this," she admitted, her voice laced with a mysterious warmth. Painful sincerity surfaced amid the polished surfaces. What was personal became a transaction, a deal crafted with cold calculation. Her gaze pierced Martha's, confronting its recipient with revelation meant to unravel intricacies lost between heartbeats. Martha listened, absorbing history spun from webs they wove blindly. Within the bridal confession flickered shared echoes, lives integrated with motives obscured, yet now exposed beneath urgency. She had not anticipated such vulnerability, an admission that undermined purported intent. The bride's eyes held unyielding defiance, but carried newfound understanding, a bearer of transformation forced from her own serenity. "By sharing that check," she explained, feelings laid bare, "you've disrupted his plan. He won't forgive you." The warning struck Martha, an intonation etched with sincerity, meant to reverberate beyond this domain. Yet, amid clear dangers lay possibilities of détente born from vulnerabilities neither had revised until now. "Thank you for telling me," Martha murmured, securing her gratitude between validity and apprehension. The bride nodded, enveloped by unease that mirrored Martha's own reflection. Then she stepped away, acquiescing to her father's ethos, but releasing confessions she could never reclaim. As the powder room reopened its passage into splendid, falsified companionship beyond. Alone again, Martha remained bathed beneath opulent shadows. Her heart wrestled with contradictions, visions spinning between reflections and endless fears she might have set into motion. Perhaps she could hide beneath justifications, behind kindness scattered among subtle truths she sought to foster, but caution reigned upon her heart now. She had chased after honors and valor in the face of derision, yet she feared she may have misunderstood and miscalculated the extent of risk. The mirrors wrapped around her, a prism reflecting uncertainty into a tension she dared not surrender to reverie. Reality broadened and blurred around her, each revelation cascading into an understanding born from sincerity and warnings imparted alike. Apprehension coiled around her mind, succinct for now, but ominous in consequence, as she untangled her thoughts from burdened considerations. Was it responsibility or rebellion driving their prior revelations? She could not decide, but only ponder amid cacophony, paired with reflections, each one merging with memories she dared not relinquish. Having unenfolded amidst revelations, Martha faced a choice intertwined with courage, but an uncertain balance against an abyss she had not expected. Safety and desire, now woven together, and amid that quiet aftermath sat her unyielding presence, surpassing appearances, straddling realities, nurturing insights, wrapping hearts inside reflections that refused to yield. As visions blurred beneath acceptance, and she gazed long into restless shadows, Martha remained resolved, her purpose forged from trust, woven amid complications even she had not foreseen, her spirit persevering not beyond itself but against unseen horizons, interwoven with insights not yet unspooled. The music softened, filling the grand hall with gentle notes that danced around happy faces and elegant gowns. Guests swirled in celebration, yet lingering unease cast subtle doubts across many heartfelt moments. Martha watched, absorbing fragments of joy and uncertainty with equal awareness, the kind of poignant mingling felt by those forced down paths, unyielding yet necessary. "Miss Callahan," a voice called over the thrumming orchestra, a call issuing from the bride's family, filled with insincere politeness and patronizing expectation, fluttering beneath velvet pleasantries. "Would you care to say a few words?" Martha wavered beneath scrutiny, fragile threads enveloping a heart stripped bare of pretense, but fortified by necessity. She nodded, all courage gathered beneath resolve as she approached the spotlight, her steps aligning shadows into radiance unforeseen. Taking up the microphone, she paused till silence clasped around her, the hush bearing witness to anticipation now woven upon prismatic surfaces and unseen complexities, maintaining vibrant truths without concealing fears left scattered. "My son David means the world to me," she began, her words flowing past doubts but nestled amid sincere intentions. "From the moment he was born, he brightened our lives with his laughter and kindness." The room quieted further, as if longing to hear reimagined tones paired with echoes that resonated within reflections truths bending beneath vulnerability, sharing dimensions neither imagined until now. It was through sacrifice that I learned the meaning of true wealth, wealth bestowed only through compassion, unconditional love, and the courage to bridge gaps across difference, for values unyielding to prejudice and longing among hidden shapes. Her voice melded with conviction, an embodiment forged between shadows, overlapping beyond appearances, embracing foundation beyond superficial unity. It isn't the riches that define us, but the choices we make in pursuit of what truly matters. In standing amid strife, not for monetary indulgence alone, but for benign tribute eternal among shifting sands. Guests considered her phrases a pause, immersed in echoes turned anew, unveiling thoughts unshared, and secrets protected behind gilded masks, betwixt fragmented fears long sheltered upon hidden folds. Let us cherish those moments boundless, free from trappings materialistic or inked in hollow bonds of tradition. For what matters transcends wealth and embrace recursive, secure beneath memories unbroken. As silence deepened, Martha dared to spin legacy beneath her insights, her vision unfurling beyond guarded truths, invoking inspiration broader than the evening's charade could anticipate. Within her calm entreaty dwelled sentiment compelling in richness, unconfined and shared through eternity's prism of belonging. The room's atmosphere shifted distinctly. A space now engulfed in humanity revealed beyond its shimmering facades, aroused anew beneath shared understanding, and unity unknown yet unchanged across gratified souls. Tears appeared, traces shimmering harmonious within ageless realms, dispelling cautions faint, yet newly transformed beneath threads, yet acknowledged within sullied spaces as collective and unchanged. Martha offered a benediction without regret or hesitation, her appeal embodied within trust, woven into fragments unveiled, framing kinship tangled amid divisions but strengthening realms unforeseen. Soft applause embraced her, an emergence, shared of insights blooming through polarities migrated, climbing neither slowly nor swiftly, but finding strength through sincerity steadfast and unwavering. David stepped forward from the tableau of color and emotion, his grip gentle but fortified with newfound acknowledgement, planting unwavering resolution among roots strong beneath his heart. "That was beautiful, mother," he murmured, his voice soft yet echoing through the space between them, as if sharing clarity issued between shadows resolved amid visions that translated beyond spoken meaning. They stood united, amid cascading change, bridging aspirations drawn clear of surface tensions, spinning legacy across spaces, shared unconstrained upon horizons unfiltered. Beneath a silent ritual of belonging, they transcended misplaced wealth, both sacred and eternal. Narratives emerged upon familiar grounds, woven together not through static light but in forming a unity defined beyond illusions scattered. The ballroom's exuberance waned, its energy diffusing into smaller pockets of laughter and conversation. Lights dimmed to softer tones, stringing moments of revelry with a touch of nostalgia. Martha observed as the vibrant dance floor slowly cleared, revealing discrete clusters in the shadows. Her gaze caught a flicker in the corner, a group of men in sleek suits huddled closely, conferring with the bride's father. Their hushed voices raised an unbidden sense of suspicion. Threads of unease tingled at the periphery of her senses. As she watched, the bride's father's face held a smile that didn't reach his eyes, a certain calculated edge beneath the practiced charm. His gestures, smooth yet pointed, sowed seeds of distrust in Martha's mind. "Martha, are you all right?" asked a distant cousin, noting her distant stare. "Just a lot on my mind," Martha replied, her voice attempting warmth. Inside, worry began its cycle, a mix of protectiveness and the awareness that things weren't as they seemed. As she turned away from the lingering conversations, Martha felt the weight of concern tug at her. Her steps felt deliberate, guiding her past the waning smiles and towards the exit. Glancing over her shoulder, she saw the suits spread like specters occasionally glancing her way, their intentions masked within the veil of diplomacy. She strode toward her hotel, nestled nearby, grateful for the solitude its walls promised. The entrance greeted her silently, and she welcomed its retreat from the evening's show. The elevator whisked her upward, offering quiet echelons away from the burdens of unforeseen dynamics. Once inside her room, Martha closed the door and leaned against it briefly, absorbing the isolation. Her purse, resting on the nightstand, appeared innocuous, yet held possibilities unforeseen. Martha moved toward the window, pulling the curtain aside, and observing the moon's reflection over the courtyard. A stillness contrasted the evening's veil of splendor. She breathed deeply, welcoming the silence. The events of the day mingled within her thoughts, a kaleidoscope of emotions blended into wisdom not entirely her own. Her mind returned to moments shared with guests and family, a convergence of beauty tangled in threads of uncertainty. She felt evenings warring between empathy and manipulation, emotions laid bare yet linked with unspoken motives. Drawing strength from her convictions, Martha turned towards the vanity mirror and gazed at her reflection. Pondering the choices made amidst layered truths, she recalled the bride's warning, woven with sincerity and cloaked indifference. Grieving over paths her son entwined, Martha faced stairs scattered upon foundations, neither simple nor gentle, a synthesis of shadows revealed as suspicion turned to reality. Her phone buzzed, a tremor against silence, soon diffused over the room. Startled, Martha reached for it in haste, the rhythmic urgencies replaced with a static message stamped upon the illuminated screen. Unauthorized transaction detected, it read, the black text sinking into her awareness like a stone. Panic rose swiftly within her as she swiped the notification open, her eyes scanning the details thoroughly. A transaction set earlier that evening, unfathomed in grandeur and dark in temperament. The stark figures sprawled across the screen, igniting feelings of disbelief and injustice. Her heart raced. Caught in the sudden storm of revelation, a fear cloaked within realization surfaced to issues unimagined. Martha steadied herself, wrestling uncertainty beneath pivotal understanding, aware now that forces were at play determining the family's fate beyond the evening's tapestry. Grasping at threads, she paced the room, piecing together elements refracted through stained glimmers of intrusion and dignity. Her convictions fueled resolve, a synthesis now grounding composure beneath decisions both fragile and enduring amid shadows shared. She sat on the bed, her eyes resolute amid pulsating fears, a whirlwind of thoughts longing for clarity yet steadfast upon roots shared well beyond appearances. Martha faced boundaries interlacing secrets held together beneath vulnerability, unspoken, a conviction shared and summoned to eclipse tensions unfurled within cycles encompassing grief, compassion, and unexpected courage. Martha pressed trembling fingers against the sleek surface of her phone, dialing with urgency. Each ring seemed to amplify the panic pounding within her chest. She sat perched on the hotel bed, eyes fixed on the scrolling digits, as if willing each moment to yield answers, a sense of clarity among swirling chaos. "Banking services, how may I assist you today?" came the voice, sterile yet professional. "My accounts, there's been an unauthorized transaction," Martha managed, her voice quivering but lined with determination. "I need to know what happened and how quickly we can resolve this." "Please hold while I access your account details," the representative replied, the sound of keystrokes threading silence with methodical rhythms. Martha's impatience unspooled, clenching the phone tightly. Quiet enveloped the room, a solitary companionship disrupted only by the faded hum of air conditioning. Her mind raced over implications, an inheritance etched with compassion, and interwoven into plans suddenly stranded on ambition's uncertain shores. Now, instead of celebrating, Martha faced accusations that could fracture her resolve and family alike. Her gaze fell upon the wedding photos scattered beside her, moments captured in hopeful frames now gripped by betrayal's shadow. The laughter depicted seemed far, echoes of joy now echoed by whispers she couldn't control. "Ma'am, it appears there's been significant unauthorized activity," the voice on the line confirmed, now laced with concern. "You acted swiftly, contacting us. Our fraud investigators are mobilizing immediately." "What about the funds?" Martha asked, urgency cutting through her composure. "I need them secured. They were meant for my son, for people who truly need them." "The account will remain frozen while we investigate, Miss Callahan. We'll reach out as soon as we know more." "Thank you," Martha replied, her voice firm despite the tempest within. She ended the call, her thoughts blurring under the weight of revelation. Soon frantic headlines crossed her screen. Martha Callahan's lavish wedding deception. The rapid spread drew Martha into silent frustration. Words smeared across digital platforms unraveled into interpretations no longer her own. The stories multiplied, each assessing her actions with implications of deceit and folly. Unwelcome speculation exploding into the communal web. She pictured the guests' faces pivoting from admiration to recoil. Somewhere among judgments zagged the agony of whether justice would prevail. History defined amid motives manipulated beyond her control. The quiet fortified Martha's determination akindle amidst uncharted storms looming wherever insight faltered. Her steps moved determinedly over the plush carpet, drawing strength from memories buried beneath intentions understood. Family awaited beyond the door. As Martha opened it, expectation threaded the hall unfurling. Among muted expression, David appeared at its archway, shoulders rigid. His eyes conveyed recognition, shadowed by discomfort. "Mother," he began, a mixture of hope and bewilderment churning within the name itself, a remnant twinged with betrayal. "Did you lie? Everyone news keeps saying your gift's just made up. A stunt." The words hung integrally, waiting. Martha faced their unfurling truth with conviction. Her voice met his with gentle understanding, unwavering. Son, I promised you hope from my heart, not deceit. What you've heard manipulating half-truths, it's their darkness speaking, not mine. David's brows furrowed, weighed by turmoil shared and personal integrity strained unequally between them. But how could things go wrong so quickly? Came his reply, each syllable caught amid breath's strain. The money was real, David, Martha replied, sincerity interwoven within solid truths upheld against accusations. Someone wants us divided within shadows brighter than themselves. But what we build together, my faith in you, it transcends anything they think they know. David's posture softened, uncertainty quelling beneath shared trust, a lighthouse among surging complexities lining their path within the storm's firmament. Their connection threaded compassion at its core, unbroken even amidst external forces, intent on unraveling deep knots bonded through time's threading forces unseen. Separated only by skewed understanding, yet connected decisively through pathways shaping resistance, they stood together, facing the uncharted boundaries of truth and dissonance interwoven, waiting to emerge as conviction's salve determined to eclipse shadows unbidden. A hush fell over the crowd as speculation turned to murmurs, eyes following Martha with a mixture of pity and judgment. The air hung thick with suspicion as reporters loitered at the edges, cameras poised, hoping to capture a moment worthy of headlines. Martha felt the weight of their stares, each whisper like a needle, sharp and unyielding. David stood a few paces from her, his face a tapestry of confusion and reluctant duty. Mother, he began, keeping his voice low but firm, I think it's best if you leave now until we know more about this mess. Martha met his eyes, searching for the son she had raised, the boy who once cried at the thought of leaving her side for the first day of school. Now he seemed distant, a man tangled in webs neither had seen coming. She nodded slowly, forgiving the crack in his voice that betrayed a ripple of his own questioning faith. I understand, she whispered, leaning in to kiss his cheek, feeling the coolness of his skin against her lips, the reserve in his form. I'll figure this out, David, she assured him, summoning a smile that she hoped concealed her tattered spirit. Without another word, she turned from the glittering celebration. Each step felt like a heavier step into despair. Music from the reception hall drifted through her thoughts, every note highlighting the chasm between her humble world and the gilded realm she was leaving behind. The night air wrapped around her like a cloak, cool and relentless. Each footfall echoing on the gravel pathway seemed to amplify the emptiness within her handbag, now void of its miracle. With every whisper she caught on the night breeze, its cushioned weight seemed to lighten faded papers for heavy intent abandoned. At the estate's ornate gates, Martha caught a glimpse back at the grandeur she'd been so keenly aware of. The chandeliers glistened like stars borrowed from the night skies, unreachable but beautifully telling in their light. The elegance of it all dimmed, cloaked now in shadows of greed and ambition. Clutching the handbag tighter, she whispered into the night, "This isn't the end, love. There's always a sunrise." When she reached the main road, each step seemed to fall into a reluctant goodbye. Yet a new resolve stirred within her, a light she had honed while facing adversity, yet again not to fade under despair, but illuminate what matters most. Determination wove through hesitation's seams, knitting them sealed. As she ventured forward, the warmth of compassion flickered within a guiding flame against the deepening shadows. The journey may have shifted, but she would forge her path anew, carrying the weight of what seemed lost and the hope for what was not yet found. Martha returned to the solace of her trailer, its modest walls a refuge from the world's harsh judgments. Here, in her sanctuary, the echoes of doubt could be hushed by prayer and memory. The evening settled around her, a quiet symphony interrupted only by the soft creak of the floorboards beneath her, and the distant rustle of leaves brushing against the windows. She sat at the small table that had witnessed years of quiet battles and bittersweet victories, a simple family photograph at its center. Propelled by gravity, her gaze shifted toward it, fingers tracing the fractals of time depicted in its frame. Her late husband's eyes looked back at her, a gentle weight of comfort nestled in that ghostly stare. Tears welled and spilled over, gliding down her cheeks like a river realizing its course. "Martha, seek truth," Jacob's voice whispered in her memory, laden with the warmth of unspent resolve. It was his mantra, a light like a candle, unwavering and burning through every storm and shadow. It was this mantra that led her to this path, and she had nearly forgotten it amid the clamor of grandeur and murmurs. The richest gift isn't money, it's truth, she recalled him saying, his voice an echo painting clearer with each heartbeat she allowed to whisper it. In every turn of life's tapestry, it was truth that anchored their dream, even if fortune might seem generous against its woven light. It was truth that would reel her back from muted despair to face the reality that others could not hold. Martha lingered there, enveloped in reflection and prayer, inviting guidance to stitch together what was fraying beneath the weight of burdened loss. Her fingers, trembling with purpose, touched Jacob's static cheek once more, absorbing hope from its fractal edges that tugged at her heart's intent. "I need you, Jacob," she breathed, tilting her head toward the heavens, as if seeking his pinned reflection among them. "Guide me toward what is right." Glimpses of past shared joys and battles slowly wove around her, each stitch releasing questions she could now dare embrace. What would he do now, in the embrace of adversity and accusation, with whispered promises unheard but eyes that need trust? Through wet lashes moist with grief and purpose, an inner strength ignited a crossroad beacon, determination unweaved from her tears, forming intent from fabrics only worn from their seam. As dusk settled further into its shadowy retreat, clarity cut through the muttered air's unseen threads linking certainty from doubt, and courage accompanied by its resolute twin strategy. Martha rose, confidence now firm, her heart she'd once steeled now unfurled. With measured breaths, Martha crossed the familiar room and retrieved the phone she'd kept nearby on a small shelf. She knew who she needed, the lawyer who had helped her through trials both legal and personal, unwavering in truth's embrace. The number he'd given her, inscribed within pages of memory and digits familiar, rolled easily from retrieval. With each dial tone beckoning, her resolve manifested into action, weaving a call to justice and renewal. "Hello, Tom," she spoke, her voice a tapestry laced with strength and sparking action from stilled hesitation. "Martha!" His voice carried warmth and surprise, layered in familiarity and gentle support. "I need your help, Tom. The wedding. There's been trouble. I believe the accounts were hacked," she began, each word steady as they spilled forth, the weight of truth demanding acknowledgement in their wake. "I suspected so as well," Tom replied, an edge of investigation lending depth to his tones. "Gather what you need, Martha. We'll seek out the truth together." Martha listened with gratitude, picking up threads for their cause. She embraced the light of Jacob's wishes as her own, walking anew into this resolve, a covenant forged from integrity, a gift he would surely call truth. Morning light filtered through the clouds, casting gentle shadows as Martha arrived at the small office tucked in a corner of the bustling town square. A brass plaque beside the entrance bore the name Tom Blackwell, attorney at law. It was a quiet testament to the man inside, renowned for tenacity and dedication. The door swung open, releasing the aroma of brewed coffee mixed with musty, time-worn books. Tom stood at the center, a keeper of knowledge framed by shelves heavy with history and resolution. "Martha?" he greeted, extending a hand warm with a sincerity she recognized. His gaze carried an understanding that needed no words, aligning with her silent resolve. "Tom, thank you for seeing me," Martha replied, her voice firm with the intention gathered overnight amid shadows of truth and resolve. They settled into chairs, the aged leather comforting under the weight of purpose. Without preamble, Tom leaned forward, intent gleaming from his eyes like reflections upon still water. "Last night, after our call, I began preliminary inquiries." Tom began, confidence woven through his words, each syllable carrying weight and assurance. "There's evidence suggesting a targeted sabotage. Your financial accounts didn't become frozen by accident." Martha's shoulders bore the brunt of this revelation, though expectation softened its blow. She nodded, acknowledgement freeing her from doubt's grip now that the path was clearing, uncovering truths long buried beneath malice. "What do we need to do?" Martha's question hung in the air, a thread tied to actions not yet seen. It was the beginning of her journey and answer, calling her from despair toward clarity and resolve. Tom smiled, a gesture that revealed his conviction and allegiance. "We expose the truth. I'll gather proof before the weekends, tracing the origins of this sabotage. Your accounts, Martha, they'll speak untold tales of betrayal and greed." Martha listened, her heart a metronome of possibilities and justice redefined. Every truth he promised reached into her soul, each word igniting fires of defiance once dormant. "There's more," Tom added, setting papers before her that bore secrets unshielded by crafted narratives. "Conversations intercepted it. Appears the bride's father orchestrated it all, using his connections to breach your defenses." Surprise and familiar pain clashed within Martha, realizing the depths of deception run beneath gilded surfaces. Yet the clarity painted sharper lines on her resolve, framing motives only greed could craft. "A confrontation is coming," Martha voiced, grounding thoughts in breath and assurance. Each heartstring tethered to truth sang from depths of devotion unswayed by trials seen or unseen. "Yes, but with proof in hand, Martha, they'll have little leverage," Tom assured, eyes sparkling with plans woven from justice's loom. "When ready, we present our findings, let them unravel their lies in court if necessary." Martha inhaled deeply, weaving strength with every breath. Let purpose untangle the fabric of ruin she once feared. It wasn't just hers. It was a tapestry uniting hearts longing for truth's embrace. A legacy for Jacob, and those never shielded by wealth's shadow. "Jacob said truth was the richest gift," Martha murmured, words a tether drawing back from memory's sacred well. "I'll hold on to that come what may." Tom nodded, backing her resolve, a witness to strength triumphing over injustice. Together, they would face this path, unraveling knots that greed spun beyond sight, intent ringing in unison through time-aligned chords. "I'm with you," Tom promised, sealing their pact with devotion untarnished by fear. "We'll shine a light on the truth, and shadowed plots will fade." Martha steadied herself, gathering up courage forged not by solitude, but by faith shared. Her spirit felt unwavered, a force poised to tide them through storms threatening their ideals. "I will not be defeated," Martha affirmed, her voice a sound of determination cutting through doubt's fabric, weaving threads of truth into the loom of courage steadfast. She departed the office, carrying independence and purpose with every step, lightened by burdens previously entombed within shadows. Her path was clear now, woven with change only truth and faith afford. They would seek justice for those bereft of its promise. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the lace curtains of Martha's trailer, casting delicate patterns on the worn carpet. There was a gentle knock on the door, tentative yet deliberate. Martha opened it to reveal a woman standing with an aura of dignified elegance, age having graced her features with wisdom rather than surrender. "Mrs. Callahan?" the woman said softly, her voice holding a familiarity that warmed the space between them. She carried herself with the grace of one who had known both hardship and mirth, and the lines on her face spoke stories seldom shared. "Yes," Martha replied, ushering her in. The woman crossed the threshold, her presence quiet yet commanding, as if the moment pivoted upon her entrance alone. "I'm Eleanor," she introduced, eyes searching Martha's with a depth that belied societal artifice, grounding their exchange as allies rather than strangers. "I am the bride's grandmother." Martha gestured to a nearby chair, inviting Eleanor to sit. The air around them seemed to hold its breath, waiting for narratives to unfold, for revelations shrouded in silence to break free. As Eleanor settled, Martha took her own seat across from her, curiosity tempered with respect. Eleanor's gaze swept the room, lingering on remnants of Martha's life. The faded photograph on the mantel, mementos of love and loss cherished beyond time's reach. "I thought it important to visit you," Eleanor began. "Circumstances have shadowed the truth, and I fear my silence has played its part." Her voice was rich, textured with history, varnished by reflection and regret. Martha leaned forward slightly, open to whatever wisdom Eleanor might share. "Thank you for coming," she acknowledged, embracing the presence of hearts willing to connect. Eleanor nodded, a quiet grace that moved through the space surrounding them. "Years ago, I lived much like you do now, humbly and content. Wealth found us, but it changed my son, made him crave what cannot be given by money alone." Martha listened, the echoes of Eleanor's words resonating with the chambers of her own past, where ambition and fortune often paled beside unyielding values. "My son, the bride's father, has chosen a path driven by greed," Eleanor continued, each syllable painting vivid the picture of truths covered by gilded veneers. "I watched from the sidelines, hoping the love I showed would anchor him, but—" her voice wavered, revealing the futility and hopes misplaced in ambition's shadow. Martha's eyes brimmed with recognition. She knew the strength it took to reconcile dreams undone by choices one could not unmake. "You are formidable, Mrs. Callahan," Eleanor voiced, breaking the silence with an affirmation that bound them beyond the confines of mere acquaintance. "You've shown courage when most shrink beneath judgment." "It often feels like a battle I soldier alone," Martha admitted, her words peeling back layers of vulnerability and timidity shaping her days until now. Eleanor offered a sympathetic nod, revealing the empathy in her eyes. "Truth outlives greed," she asserted, bridging divides with simplicity. "In times like these, it serves as a beacon bright, even in despair's grasp." Martha felt the resonance of those words fortifying her soul with renewed courage. Here was an ally, someone who had crossed the gauntlet of wealth's ambition, and emerged still tethered to integrity and hope. A warmth spread through Martha, connecting their shared understanding beneath surfaces marred by trials. "We'll face this together," Martha affirmed, recognition lifting the veil of solitude. Eleanor's smile reached deep, her gaze once more a source of hope. "May your spirit stay indomitable against shadows cast by greed," she wished with sincerity, a blessing given through stories unshared but understood. As Eleanor prepared to leave, the sunlight dipped low, creating silhouettes of strength upon their paths now aligned. Martha walked Eleanor to the threshold, her heart lighter, fortified by Eleanor's truth. Their eyes met again, acknowledging the journey ahead and its burdens now shared. Together, they stood amid change's promise anchored by truth, their narratives entwined in justice. Martha watched Eleanor fade into the afternoon's embrace, the resolution birthed by their exchange securing her purpose anew. Here was faith, here was courage, steps taken upon untrodden paths drawn from veracity and hope eternal, unfrazzled by monumental trials, seen or unseen. The autumn sun painted fleeting shadows across the opulent country estate, where laughter flickered in the air alongside the clinking of glasses. Martha Callahan stepped into the garden, her presence as unexpected as it was indomitable. Whispers flitted among guests, like leaves rustling in a furtive breeze. "She's here," someone murmured, disbelief coloring their tone. Martha walked with quiet dignity, resolute as she navigated the clusters of elaborately dressed guests. Each step was a testament to her determination, her heart a steady drumbeat beneath layers of fortitude and grace. She wielded a firm grip on the leather-bound portfolio her lawyer entrusted to her, like a weapon unsheathed in battle. "Can you believe she showed up?" a voice whispered, echoing a ripple of tension through the assembly. A figure approached. It was the bride's father, his features etched in polished disdain. He carried himself with an air of superiority, a man accustomed to bending circumstance to favor his ambitions. "Back to play poor little rich woman?" he taunted, his voice imbued with equal measures of contempt and arrogance, as though he owned the very ground she trod upon. The corners of Martha's mouth tightened. However, her resolve remained firm. She met his gaze, unwavering, as though compelling the world with her silence to pause and bear witness to a conflict brewing, a woman armed, not with might but with truth. "I'm here for the truth," Martha replied, her voice clear and calm, betraying nothing of unease beneath her gaze. Guests ceased their chatter, the garden stilled, poised in anticipation. They watched as Martha walked toward the head table, where elegance conspired with deceit under the guise of grandeur. Her presence challenged the luxurious veneer, refusing to waver beneath judgments lavishly offered. Every eye watched as Martha approached, whispers dying beneath the caress of uncertainty. "I wonder what she's planning," an onlooker mused, their intrigue palpable beneath curious gazes. Once at the table, she rested the portfolio beside the gleaming silverware, a poignant contrast against the sheen of culinarian opulence. She met the gaze of the bride's father one last time, the fire in her eyes unquenched, unyielding. "You assumed my silence meant defeat, but truth waits for those patient enough to seek it." Her voice resonated, a sweet melody in an otherwise suffocating symphony of derision. A hush settled over the gathering, a silence woven from strands of disbelief and unease. Expectation hung taut upon the air, as if the very earth beneath them braced itself for the revelation. The bride, her cheeks flushed with mirth edged with apprehension, glanced nervously at her father, then back at Martha. Her eyes flickered so quickly that the truth or lies couldn't be deciphered. Martha inhaled deeply. Every breath carried words she had rehearsed, silently yet fervently. In this precise moment, she prepared to untangle deception from hope's embrace. "This folder," she tapped the worn leather cover lightly, its texture grounding her amid uncertainty, "contains proof." Murmurs surged like an unfurled tide. Disbelief mingled with wonder as eyes darted sideways, assessing the equilibrium on the precipice of change. A few leaned in, curious, others sat back wary, biding their time for the fallout. The bride's father smirked, that thinly veiled disdain twisting ugliness within charm. "Proof?" he scoffed, attempting decorum yet failing to conceal the tremor beneath superficial ease. Martha slipped from incredulity to insight unfurling. Calmly opening the folder, she laid its contents upon the table, a bridge linking hope to freedom from the chains masked in wealth's allure. "I plan on sharing all there is to know," Martha declared, her voice carrying strength beyond the barriers imposed by deception and mistrust. She released truth unto the world no longer theirs to shroud. More whispers swept through the air, breathing life into anticipation stirred by the promise embedded within revelation. As guests scanned the documents, a shift pulsed through their ranks, a symphony of doubt replaced by clarity absolute. Martha, holding fast to courage, stood resolute amid the shifting sands of their expectations, all eyes upon her, a testament to unwavering strength and hope rekindled anew. In her heart, she bore the assurance that legacy anchored in truth would never be subdued by silence. Martha stood firm as the room buzzed with disbelief. Eyes flickered between her and the documents she had placed on the table, each sheet an undeniable testament to the wrongdoing orchestrated from within. The garden, once a showcase of grandeur, now indicated the tremors of revelation coursing through the guests, each shifting beneath the weight of truth unveiled. Guests exchanged furtive whispers that grew louder, until they coalesced into one sound, a collective gasp punctuating the air with astonishment. From the father's office, one voice echoed, drawing others to see the lines of hack trails sketched meticulously across printed pages. Questions multiplied, layered with accusation and realization. Martha watched them react, each person digesting the weight of evidence that spoke with clarity in a world accustomed to luxury's murmur. The bride stood nearby, her hands clenched tightly at her side. The color drained from her face, unveiling vulnerability beneath the decorum she had carried. She moved with hesitant steps until her father's shadowed presence fell upon her, obfuscating the band of sunlight trying to pierce his veneer of deceit. Her eyes seemed to carry an internal storm she had fought for too long, the embers of rebellion now flaring. She swallowed the conviction forming in her throat, desperate yet daring to put words to truth. I. Her voice wavered, trembling with emotion she had refused to unleash. Martha observed the struggle from across the table, her own heart echoing sympathy cradled within understanding. The bride inhaled deeply, searching through the fear ensnaring her spirit, until she felt it loosening her to reveal an unburdened confession. My father orchestrated it all, she rasped, her tone shaky but determined, amplified by the silence strangling the gathering until every gaze converged upon neither her nor the documents, but the man ensnared beneath revelation's grip. Gasps sank once more into the room's opulence, now transformed by the truths it carried. The bride's father, his poise lost amidst the deluge of exposure, remained rooted by fury threading through shame. He glanced toward Martha with eyes smoldering above disdain, but within that flicker lay surrender's shadow, timid yet absolute. Ridiculous, he blustered, attempting bravado laced with arrogance crumbling beneath scrutiny's keen eye. Fabrications! He spat the words, but they found no purchase in the ears of those witnessing the fall of gilded misdeeds. Martha only met his gaze with an unwavering presence, her stance signaling a justice long denied, one whose grasp now stood firm, emancipating truth from deceit's shackles. Eyes bored into him, casting judgment with silent articulation. Let it be, father, came the bride's whisper, now assured, no longer shielded by the burden he had placed upon her name. Her father turned sharply, disbelief and rage echoing with every movement. He storms past her, his steps heavy with defeat. Guests part before his retreat, a fractured path giving shape to the contours of disgrace and downfall. The bride watched him retreat, regret mingled with release in her eyes. As her father exited the grand estate, disbelief and contempt etched upon the faces of onlookers. It gathered into murmur, the indelible whisper of disgraced authority slipping from grasp. Martha stood witnessing, as voices lifted into discourse fractured by contempt, but catalyzed by understanding. Does he realize what he's done? Questioned one guest, their words trailing beneath intrigue and the pocket of resonance harboring condemnation. Guests, once indulgent in wealth's embrace, now pondered greed's shadow, revealed finding space to seek compassion amidst confusion's residues. The bride, her eyes finding Martha's across the void fashioned of shared sorrow and newfound courage, spoke through the fracture-weaving insight through regret. I'm sorry for everything. Martha, embracing the sincerity resonating from her, offered but a nod, a simple act, witnessing the bond between fallible souls striving toward redemption post-betrayal. As murmurs continued, Martha understood that legacy now unfurled one not bound by fortune's guild, but instead by connection seated with truth, moving bravely toward resolution and hope to harbor trust anew. With the truth declared, the estate's wealth witnessed its transfiguration, a catalyst leading hearts beyond greed's rupture, leaving each soul to reflect upon change spawned by courage unforeseen. The ballroom, once tense and fraught with the aftermath of revelation, found itself pierced by Martha's presence, a gentle yet resolute command, demanding attention. Faces turned, curiosity ignited once more by the unexpected force-coaxing transformation across held biases and previous assumptions. Martha stood centered beneath the chandeliers, her posture upright amidst the swirling reflections. She bore the weight of her task with the grace embedded deep within her voice climbing above the room's whispers. "I stand before you, humbled," she began, the sincerity in her voice drawing absent hearts nearer. "Having witnessed what unchecked greed can bring, I cannot allow it to fracture what treasures lie within our spirit." Guests watched, silent and contemplative, as Martha shifted toward resolve, a mission birthed from the turmoil but now finding footing upon hope's foundation. "My fortune," she spoke, touching the hearts grown watchful and unshielded, "will not serve to widen divides, nor sow seeds of discord. It must grant shelter to those whose voices remain obscured by circumstance, to those whose courage bridges their path." Expressions softened, their curiosity, only just awakened to compassion, folding forward dreams they had only glimpsed in part. Martha's soul offered not wealth alone. Its purpose lay deeper, a light extending glory, beyond confines of affluence, bending 'neath ambition's shadow. Her gaze traced every face, charting gratitude's course across humanity. Terrain she vowed to nurture by promise, born of her insights reclaimed through past pains, now pruned of despair. She took inspiration from the fold of wisdom carried by memories threaded with love relentless. By finding homes for mothers who carry their burdens deeply, by fostering food, education, and dignity, Martha continued, we can build bridges, thread hope through resilience, and light paths toward futures no longer prisoner to poverty's chain. Whispers of astonishment rippled amidst her declarations, the room poised on the edge of blossoming comprehension. Beneath wit and judgment, beneath curiosity turned to indifference, hearts began to thaw as charitable truth wove webs connecting disparate lives. Eyes gleamed watchful, intrigued, each seeking revelation emblazoned beyond gilded greed, beyond validation spun from wealth's grasp. The meaning of true legacy unfolded, a lighting revelation propelled by Martha's conduit of truth. Martha paused, a collective breath of room's anticipation holding steady before release, a drop into understanding, habiting rebirth of joy now assured, unfurling vibrant emotion painting. Heartlight brushed upon guests assembled. For widows, single mothers, and families struggling beyond limits of circumstance, Martha spoke, her voice firm with intention. Together, we hold the power to bless each life, each soul seeking respite amidst trails unforeseen. Gulf. She stepped into the quiet that followed, the room letting her words settle like the brush of gentle dawn above wisdom renewed. Those who once cast glances of disdain now clasped understanding, drawn beneath compassion's influence, igniting knowing inside. David watched his mother, awe etched into his features, reflecting pride bound deeply to shared truths witnessed and strengthened. He rose from his place, joining her on the platform amidst expressions yearning toward comprehension. As Martha shared the name of this new venture, the Callahan Trust of Grace and Hope, the room erupted, applause bursting forth with sincerity, a wave of acknowledgement cascading across boundaries once defined by indifference. Martha turned to see David, their eyes meeting in celebration tinctured with resilience. He stepped forward, each stride filled with purpose. As he reached her, a tangible bond formed through shared vision, now unfurling into hope unified. David embraced his mother, arms wrapped around, each truth discovered along broken paths filled with redemption. A gesture of love embodying acknowledgement, heart steering toward fulfillment, guided by compassion beyond hearsay's influence. Applause continued, echoing through the hall, their shared promise now burning beneath resolve. Amidst the unfolding tapestry of appreciation, the Callahan Trust had begun weaving a legacy designed not by avarice, but by the undying flame of hope reborn. The hum of the crowd seemed to muffle as the bride, her face flushed with a mix of emotions, approached Martha. Her movements were hesitant, as if navigating a tightrope suspended over the judgment that floated in the air. She halted just before Martha, her eyes downcast, a faint tremor in her voice. "I'm sorry," she whispered, words almost lost amidst the fading chatter. "I didn't know what my father was planning." Martha stood steady, her eyes gentle pools of understanding. "Apology is the beginning," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight that belied its tenderness. "But it's more than that, dear. It's about choosing love, not the whispers of greed. That is all I ask, choose love." The bride's eyes rimmed with tears as she looked into Martha's face. Here was a woman who had every right to be furious, humiliated, wronged, yet she stood poised, her forgiveness flowing freely like gentle waves washing away guilt. "I never wanted it to be this way," the bride admitted, shaking her head, strands of hair tumbling from her once pristine updo. I know, Martha said, understanding illuminating her eyes as they softened. It's not too late to find what truly matters. Just then, David approached, his face pale but resolute like someone steering toward clarity amid doubts. He reached for Martha's hand, warmth in his gesture that seasonally melted the chill in her heart. Mother, he began, gazing tenderly at her face, I was wrong to doubt you. I was caught up in all of this, he gestured around the opulent room. I let myself forget who you are. Martha nodded, feeling the sincerity in his voice. We do our best to find the truth, she replied softly, squeezing his hand. And there, we build from love. The bride let out a ragged breath, her fingers gently intertwining with David's, seeking strength in her clasp. I don't want to lose us, she admitted, voice no louder than a whisper, her eyes pleading for understanding. But I can't let this define us either. David's expression softened, the tension in his shoulders dissipating. And it won't. We've got years ahead to rewrite our story, together. Martha observed the couple, her chest swelling with a quiet hope. Her son was making his choice. You two should write your own story, she suggested, glancing between them with the wisdom of a woman who had learned the value of love over many difficult years without any of the strings. The bride nodded, as if Martha's words had opened a window into a new, freeing possibility. Thank you for believing in love, for everything you've done for David, for us. A tear traced its way down her trembling cheek, but her smile returned as she looked at David, whose supportive nod affirmed newly planted intentions. Together they faced the guest's eyes unmoist, brimming now with sincerity rather than judgment. The bride, hands now firmly with her husband's, turned back to Martha and spoke with a newfound conviction. Thank you, she said. We promise we will honor this gift you've given us. We'll build a future defined by the right kind of fortune, one of love, trust, and grace. Martha placed her hands over theirs. Then you have my blessing, she assured them, her voice warm, a lighthouse guiding ships through stormy seas. The guests, their murmurs now diminished to silence, listened intently as if straining to hear the echoes of sincerity filling the grand hall. The very air seemed to shimmer with unrehearsed promise. Tensions dissolved within acknowledgement. David and his bride stood together before the room, a united front forged anew under Martha's watchful eye. The patio doors let in a soft breeze, ushering in whispers of hope and grace. We'll start fresh, together, David affirmed, squeezing his bride's hand. His voice was steady now, each word a promise. This is just the beginning. Looking at his mother, his gaze softened, acknowledging the gentle force that had sculpted this moment from unlikely odds. Martha nodded, her faith steadfast, knowing they had chosen the path charted by love, an unshakable guide through shadows of greed. Their embrace spoke of reconciliation, an unbreakable bond formed amid trials now transcended, the golden promise of building their legacy together. That tender acknowledgement suffused the room with warmth, the Callahans' embrace standing as testament not only to love-defying odds, but also to redemption unveiled through humility and steadfast hope. The bright morning sun filtered through the sprawling trees, casting playful shadows on the pavement, as Martha stepped into the warmth of the community center. Built with vision and tempered by perseverance, this place was a beacon for new beginnings, a living testament to compassion that breathed life into the hopes of many. Inside, laughter playful and unrestrained filled the air, echoing through halls lined with vibrant drawings and hand-painted murals. Martha paused, her heart swelling as she took in scenes of freshly painted walls and bustling activity, weaving a tapestry of hope whose threads formed the fabric of life renewed. Martha, you must see what's been done, called Clarissa, a young volunteer, her voice bubbling with excitement. She breezed towards Martha, eyes alight with joy, her arms spreading wide to reveal the transformations underway. Clarissa, thank you for everything, Martha exclaimed with heartfelt gratitude, eyes absorbing the surrounding life. Children dashed past them, giggling and caught in the embrace of newfound freedom. Their laughter flittered about like birds, blissfully taking flight. Look at this. Clarissa gestured toward a row of classrooms, bustling with activity. Each room is equipped with the tools they need: books, computers, art supplies, all meant to inspire. Martha walked alongside her, observing the schoolrooms where young minds absorb knowledge hungrily. Every child represented tomorrow's potential, sparking Martha's deep-seated resolve to offer them better opportunities. Many of these children didn't have homes before, Clarissa continued, as they stepped into a room illuminated by the sun streaming through tall windows. Here, they'll find safety and nourishment and love. Martha watched the children engrossed in their studies, their faces bright with curiosity. their eyes wide with eagerness. Her heart danced in quiet rhythm, satisfied by the promise unfolding before her. Home isn't just shelter, Martha mused, her voice reflective. It's about nurturing spirit, providing hope, and growing dreams. A group of women approached, their expressions carrying stories of struggles overcome, resilience etched into the lines of their smiles. One woman held a toddler close, securing her child in caring arms now assured of safety. Mrs. Callahan, the woman spoke, her voice woven with gratitude. You've given us a chance we couldn't imagine before. Yes, echoed another mother, her eyes gleaming like stars in the night. Now we sleep in peace, knowing tomorrow promises more. Together, we've made it possible, Martha replied softly, moved by the sincerity mirrored back at her. These women were warriors in spirit, builders crafting their children's futures from foundations strengthened by newfound hope. They continued their tour, the hum of conversations mixing with laughter to embroider the atmosphere with hope. The garden outside promised fresh vegetables, a labor of love where growth harvested sustenance and community alike. Martha paused, taking in the sight of a flourishing tomato plant, its fruits vibrant against the rich soil offering life. Here, growth represented more than roots penetrating earth, it was potential manifesting upward to meet light. As she stepped back inside, Clarissa leading the way, Martha soaked in the joyful chaos of children, dancing along carmine-lined corridors, their spirit unbounded, electrifying the air with exuberance. Each giggle sang of dreams embraced, nurturers accenting destinies amid fields seeded by vision and tenacity. In every corner, seeds blossomed for those who had known hardship, a living mosaic fashioned from resilience and bolstered by Martha's pledge to light paths where shadows dared trespass. Mrs. Callahan? A soft voice intercepted their steps, curiously insistent. Martha turned, captivated by the delicate countenance of a little girl, her eyes larger than the universe enveloping them. Dressed in hand-me-downs yet distinct with pride, the girl stood beneath a window bathing her in sunlight's innocence. Yes, dear? Martha crouched, met the girl's gaze, which shone with a sincerity and earnest hope found only in the young. It's Shelby, ma'am, she said quietly, companioned by shyness tempered through vulnerability. Her hands grasped the folds of her dress, voice tender yet unyielding amid its intensity. Well, Shelby, Martha returned the gentle sweep of reverberations gifted her. How can I help you? Will there be more places? Shelby asked, eyes bright with optimism's promise. Places for those like us? Martha smiled kindly. Shelby's question enveloped dreams gilded with clarity, a child's crusade to embrace others in welcome, founded by kindness's reach. There will be, Martha assured her, softly placing a hand on Shelby's small shoulder, her warmth offering an anchor. Places where everyone finds their way, feels safe to dream, lives with hope. Shelby nodded, the shine in her gaze reciting stories untold yet promising. Then, in a burst of raw emotion, she stepped forward, wrapping her tiny arms around Martha's leg, a gesture tender yet profound in its depth. Thank you. It was just a whisper, a simple promise, one filled with the ocean of possibilities now within her grasp, delivered with grace, anchored by Martha's devotion. Martha felt the warmth engulf her, a wave connecting generation to generation, a continuum of compassion shaping futures beyond measured time. Holding Shelby's tender embrace, Martha glimpsed the depth of impact residing not in material fortune alone, but rooted in love's connection, transforming tomorrow, a promise welcoming all to the horizon's everlasting embrace. Amid Shelby's arms, in an echo carved by gratitude, nature sang the choir of beginnings, the harmonious intonation of humanity bound infinite within hope's unrelenting grace. The gravel crunched under Martha Callahan's feet as she walked up the narrow path leading to the newly opened community center. The building stood proudly amidst a cluster of modest homes, its fresh paint glistening in the gentle morning sun. Martha paused at the threshold, her heart swelling with purpose and a hint of trepidation. Inside, the space buzzed with an eager energy. Women bustled around, some making phone calls while others unpacked boxes of children's books. Young children played with donated toys, their laughter filling the air like soft music. Martha's heart warmed at the sight. These were the people her gift would touch, the souls for whom she had dared to stand in front of a room filled with judgmental eyes and make a stand for love and charity. Nearby, a young mother, juggling a squirming toddler on her hip, caught sight of Martha. She approached, her expression a mixture of gratitude and hope. You must be Mrs. Callahan, she said, adjusting the baby on her hip. Martha nodded, trying to mask her shy smile. How are you settling in? Her voice was as gentle as ever, like a soft breeze rustling through the autumn leaves. Better than I have in years, the woman replied, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you for this. Martha reached out, gently squeezing the woman's hand. I only opened the door. You're the one stepping through. The woman nodded, her eyes misty. At her feet, a small girl played contentedly with a battered stuffed bear, its fur well loved. Not long ago, Martha would have been too afraid of embarrassment, too weak to stand against the sarcasm and the sideways glances that belittled her and her worn shoes. But that was before. Now she had a strength that came not from wealth, but from the knowledge that she had made a difference. One little girl, crouched near the step, looked up with wide, curious eyes. She tugged on the hem of Martha's skirt, pulling her from her thoughts. Are you the nice lady? The tiny voice asked, full of innocence. Martha knelt down, the rough stones pressing into her knee. I'm just a lady, she replied, smoothing out the girl's hair fondly. The child blinked slowly, as if processing the newness of safety and warmth around her. She reached out and clung to Martha's leg, her small hands gripping like a lifeline. Thank you, she whispered, the words barely there but heavy with gratitude. A serenity washed over Martha. These moments mattered, she realized. Each grateful glance, each tiny smile from the children was worth more than any inheritance, more valuable than any check. As Martha looked down, warm light filtered through the tall windows, casting a soft glow around the small figure at her feet. You don't need to thank me, Martha whispered back, her voice trembling with joy. Just promise you'll keep believing in what's good. The girl's eyes sparkled with unbroken hope. I will. Martha rose, casting one last look around the filled room. A cacophony of voices had grown, the chatter peppered with optimism rather than disdain. Laughter and excited questions flew over the field. Despite everything, she had made a choice, the only one that mattered in the end, one based not on fortune, but faith. As she felt the child's hand slide away, Martha made her way back down the path to where her future waited a modest cottage and the work that needed doing. Changing the world, one heart at a time, had been a struggle worth facing. A fresh start, she whispered, clutching the handle of her worn handbag like an old friend. The sun peeked over the horizon, casting a warm light that painted everything in hues of gold and promise. And as she stepped forward into that light, leaving the shadows behind, Martha knew her steps carried the weight of all those who had lifted her and those waiting for her with open hearts and hopeful eyes. Martha stood silently before the faded trailer, the walls filled with memories, echoes of laughter, whispers of dreams shared and lost. Closing the door felt like closing a chapter, one lined with humble beginnings and unwavering faith. Inside the cluttered space, her gaze fell on the photograph of her late husband. His smile was infectious, a beacon of warmth that had guided her through life's tumultuous paths. She whispered softly, "We did it, love. We gave the world hope." Her fingers brushed against the frame, a tear escaping down cheeks crumpled with resolution. With a deep breath, she placed the photo carefully in her worn handbag and stepped away, her shoes crunching against the gravel. She turned to look over the trailer park one last time, the site that had cradled her through both hardship and growth, the place that molded her into who she was now. With purposeful strides, Martha moved toward the horizon, where dawn was breaking and painting the sky in soothing pastels. The sun greeted her like an old friend, warm and inviting, lifting burdens from her shoulders. As light bathed her face, Martha walked forward into the sunrise, heart lighter than ever, her spirit buoyant, secured by faith and compassion. If you enjoyed the story of Martha Callahan, I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.